Hello all! Happy Monday to you all, and hopefully everybody is good and ready for some interesting conversation. How are you doing, Jeff?
Doing pretty well today. It's good to see you,
All right.
Robert.
Yes. All right. So let's take a quick spin through chat. We have question of Trek. I wonder why he's here. We have my co-host Professor Brainy Specs. We have John DeMarco. We have my love Mary's Game Room. Welcome, my dear. And so, without further ado, as it says in the description, we're here to talk with Mark from Question of Trek about his experiences and some of his life experiences while in the military. And the link to his channel is in the description. I know on Saturdays you guys have a wonderful show that Jeff is a part of, and I highly recommend it.
So.
I highly recommend you guys tune in if you happen to see it. But definitely subscribe if you can. You'll always be entertained, and poor Conti gets picked on. But, here we go. Let's bring in Mark. And how you doing?
He loves it. He loves it.
I do get picked on a lot. I do.
You get picked on quite a bit. You get picked on quite a bit. I've seen some of those streams. You guys get picked. You pick on poor Conti a lot.
I also get abuse from the people in the chat because I am.
It's hard when you're Mr. Know-It-All, right?
It is.
It's not your fault. You know the answer. I mean, geez.
Well, I am YouTube's whipping boy. What can I say?
Yeah. And welcome, Orville Nation and Potato Revan.
First of all, thank you for having me on. Glad to be here.
Absolutely a pleasure.
Talk about what we're going to talk about today. Jeff has asked me several occasions, if I can come on, and I wasn't sure when I can make it, but today we've got the time. I thought about discussing another subject, no, I decided to go with this one because I knew a bit more about this one because I actually experienced it. So rather than I wouldn't say try research, but there was so much on the other topic that it would have been possible to research everything that I needed
in time. Yeah,
in that time.
Yeah, I run into that problem a lot. So I guess we'll start off by just kind of letting you give us the background and set it up, and then we'll go from there.
In 2006, I was from April to November. I was on my first operation in Iraq. It was called Optelic 8. I was at the time serving with 20th Armor Brigade, 200 Signal Squadron, and for most of us in that unit, it was actually the first tour ever. Some had just come from basics, some from other units. We were pretty much all new people, and we only had like 3 months to sort of get to know, well, if that, about 3 months or so to get to know each other and try and gel and work together well, because we didn't get a lot of training. Usually you get about, I don't know, over a period of 8 months, you get a lot of training for an operational tour. But as I said, the way it went, a lot of people left the army. Some people got posted out, and others had been promoted and then sort of gone on to another unit. So obviously, we were all pretty much new guys. There had been some people who had done operations before, but were in a different unit. So again, it was very much sort of slammed together. Try and do your best, and we'll see how we get on when we're out there. Because once we're out there, it's too late, and you're kind of stuck with what you got. So great. So it was in May 2006. We've already been out there just about a month, if that. And our troop. The job of our troop was to conduct what's called force protection multiples, essentially protecting convoys to and from different destinations. So from Basra Air Station, which was our base of operations, back then was called APOD. That later became then as the C.O.B, Contingency Operations Base. But that got renamed close to the end of that tour. Our job was with 3 armoured Land Rovers, also known as Snatch Vixens, was to escort convoys, mainly consisting of like pickups or Range Rovers or any kind of civilian vehicle you can think of, and taking these that were usually filled with specialists and taking them from Basra Air Station to another location, whether it was Kuwaiti border, Shaibalog Base, Basra Palace, or some other locations. Safwan Hill, if they couldn't get out there by helicopter due to the weather, we have to drive them up there. So yeah, and we were on that day. We were on our way back from the Kuwaiti border. We set off early hours to get to the Kuwaiti border, which takes a long time because we have specialist equipment on board that would prevent an IED sort of taking us out. I can't go too much into it because you don't know who's listening, who's watching now, or who's going to be watching later on.
Absolutely.
But the only sort of thing that this equipment didn't protect us from was command wire. Imagine, if you don't know what a command wire is, basically just imagine a Roadrunner cartoon where wire carrier sets up with explosive, pulls a cable out, and then has a plunger at the end. Okay, that's a command wire IED. Nothing protects you from that, unfortunately. But anyway, we at every junction or every turnpike or whatever, we would have to stop, search the area, make sure there were no IEDs that we could see, and then the other equipment would take care of any other form of IED. And so from Basra Air Station down to the Kuwaiti border, this could take sometimes, depending on how many junctions or what route we took, because we don't always take the same routes, could be the difference between 2 hours to 4 hours. So sometimes it could be a 4-hour trip. You're out in the Iraqi heat which is about 55 degrees. And if you're not on the ground, you're in the vehicle. There's a manhole, basically a man cover you can slide open, and then you have 2 people at the top of the Land Rover, basically covering the arcs. So you've got your weapon pointing out. Now the vehicle at the front would have both weapons pointing forward. The guys at the sides would have obviously one rifle pointing out the side, and the guys at the back would have their weapons pointing to the rear to cover any any vehicles, anyone that tried to, for instance, ram into us at high speeds, which they usually did, but coming from the other direction, because at that point, there was no real Iraqi government at the time. People didn't care about the laws, so even though you were on the motorway or the highway, you've got 2 lanes going that way, and then 2 lanes on the other side of the barrier for the other direction. The Iraqis didn't care. They would come on your side of the motorway and head in the wrong direction. But sometimes, obviously, we had to give a warning shot if they refused to move or slow down. Now, we were coming back so that took about 4 hours. We were there. We had about, I think, a 2-hour break in some air in an air conditioned mess hall. We had something to eat, something to drink, cool down, and then we had to make our way back. We were about 30 minutes back. Well, on our way, we were 30 minutes back from reaching the airbase when we got a signal to say, turn around, head straight to Basra City. A helicopter had been shot down. There's a female on board. Now we knew that at that point that because this was what was called the Mahdi Army. It was like an offshoot from guys left over from Saddam's army who still believed that there was still a cause to fight for. And we knew that the Iraqi army was renowned that if they captured prisoners, they weren't going to abide by by the Geneva Conventions or any rules regarding prisoners of war. It had also been known from guys who served in Iraq in the previous war, in the 90s, that if you get captured, they're not only going to beat you and torture you, they're going to most likely they may rape you as well, and that's with the men. So we didn't know we didn't want to imagine what they were going to do, if they got their hands on a female. We at this point we're heading now. We're still on top cover. We also got told to ignore stopping at junctions, search for IEDs, anything. Just get straight down there as fast as you can. Just trust the equipment that you got in there, and hopefully you don't come out, get any, hit any command wire IEDs, and just get to the city as quickly as possible. We reached the city. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get close to where the helicopter had been taken down because the streets were filled up to about 500 people firing their weapons in celebratory fire in the air. It's what they called the Iraqi unload. It's what we often called it. We also could see that another mortar pool had been hit, and all three or four of their vehicles had been basically set on fire and taken out. The guys managed to get who were in charge of those vehicles, or the crew of those vehicles, managed to get to the palace where we had a unit station there, and get inside the palace. But I said we were on the outside of the city. We could not get anywhere in, and we saw what they did to the other motor posts. We thought we can't get in. We had to, our section commander guy called Pullen, Sergeant Dave Pullen. He radioed 0 because we had our 3 call signs, which was it 0-1 Alpha, 0-1 Bravo, and 0-1 Charlie, 1 for each vehicle. And obviously, our Troop CO or Troop O.C, our officer commanding, was obviously 0. So we would call back to him. He was 0, and then you had 0-1, then 0-1 Alpha, and 1 Bravo, 1 Charlie. And our vehicle was 0-1 Bravo. So we radioed in, what do we do? And he said there's infantry on the way. There was supposed to be armor coming in, but I don't think they could get through. But eventually the crowd started to dissipate, and once we found out why, essentially that the crew of that helicopter died, especially the woman, they all just disappeared, and that was that. And then the engineers came in, so did the infantry, and that pretty much all got cleared up. And then we made our way back. We didn't have to pick anyone up. Luckily we didn't have to make a way to try and find any missing personnel, which would have been a nightmare. But we were already dying as we were heading home, because we were looking to get some downtime, and then they turned us around and said, get out there. And in that heat, you have what's called a camelback, which is basically like a backpack that you just fill with water, has a pipe that comes down, as well as your water bottles in your webbing, and that would all become warm. So we were concerned with 3 things really: going down to heat stroke in the Iraqi heat, hoping that this woman wasn't going to get captured, or any of the personnel were going to get captured, but particularly the woman. And of course that none of us were going to get hit by any IEDs on the way down there. And that's pretty much it. I kind of rambled that one out, really, didn't I?
Oh, that's all right. That's all right. I just let you go. So I put up a picture as you were talking of the vehicle that Jeff sent me. So that's an accurate description of what you were driving at the time, I assume.
That is at the front. What's missing at the front? Obviously, the specialist equipment I talk about is missing. Is missing off the vehicle, because at the front you have these 2 boxes at either side above each headlight. We call them Big Macs. The Mac is part of the name. I can't give the name, but they gave off microwaves.
Okay.
Microwaves. So for once IEDs that had infrared sensors,
they would set them off before you got there.
It would set them off about 50 meters before we reached it. So 50 meters ahead, it will explode, and then we can carry on. And because it's armored, any fallout just hit the thing. We could obviously, when they're told you could turn it on, we'd go down, we'd go back in the vehicle, close the hatch, and then any fallout that hit the vehicle, let it hit, because it's armored and it can't hurt us. And then some other stuff as well. It would bend, for instance. We had some that had like laser sensors on them, so it would essentially bend the thing around the vehicle. It's kind of very much Star Trek technology. You thought you don't see it bend or anything. You don't see like a bubble around you or around the vehicle, but that's exactly what it did. Radio frequencies as well, and there are some interesting videos that were found in certain that they used in Afghanistan as well, of the ISIS site where they're trying to detonate a bomb and it wouldn't go off, and they couldn't understand why. Because I see these American vehicles, because Americans had the same equipment as well, and you see the American vehicles trying to get through, and these things just weren't going off, and they couldn't understand why. Quite interesting. And we've got some, shall we say, white man's magic technology. You
can't beat them, cheat them.
Yeah, pretty much.
All right, so now obviously that was I guess a day at the office, as it were. To some of us, that's like, holy shit, that's some serious shit. But I mean, to you guys at the time, that must have been just, another day at the office. And I mean,
well, the thing is, I mean, as I said, it was very rare that our multiple ever came under any fire or contact. I mean, there was one time we went through. We were heading towards Shibalog base, I think it was, and someone in the distance. We heard what's called basically when you fire a round. If you ever had a round go over your head, essentially you hear like the little sonic boom because the rounds travel at faster than the sound. You hear like a whip crack, and it's like a whack. And so we heard one of that, something that go over mine and my buddy's head at the time. But on that day, we thought, oh shit, there's going to be rounds flying everywhere, and you can see it. There were, weapons in the air, fire in the air. It was their celebratory fire, and they do that for everything. So if a guy's wife has given birth to a son, the father will come out, fire his weapon in the air, until his magazine is empty. They don't do it for girls for some reason. I don't know. I guess they don't like girls, but they do it for boys. And so they shot down a helicopter, and they were obviously quite pleased. The Mahdi army was quite pleased with that, and they just let off round after round after round in the air. And the problem was, from where we were, we could try. The best we could do was essentially while we're trying to get let the other guys watch while the other guys were trying to get in from the other side. I see if there are any snipers in the windows or on the top of the roofs, anyone trying to get towards the helicopter. There's no one. They were just all on the ground celebrating. They were happy that jobs are good, and that was it, really. I think everyone on the helicopter died, and and the woman as well. She was the first woman to die in the field in I think about 40 years, something like that.
Oh
wow!
And she
not the distinction you want, but
no,
but yeah, and I mean, some rumors had it that there was no reason for her to be on the helicopter, but I don't know. Again, rumors, you can't listen to. Rumors.
Yeah, you can't trust them. Yeah,
no.
There's always going to be something. I mean, once shit hits the fan, there's always something that somebody's going to critique, right?
There is, and it also got to the point though in that heat as well. Most of us, because with the body armor that we wore, it was what's called the Osprey, which was the big plated. It was one of the big plates. But the one with the small plate that had a plate about that large, that just covered essentially the center of mass. Which what you get taught to aim for when you in the military when you learn to shoot, is aim for the center of mass because that's the biggest part. So generally, most people aim for the middle, say the small plate, but we had the big, massive plates, and in the heat, because that was one of the hottest summers. I remember I think the highest recorded heat we had was 63 degrees Celsius. I don't know what that is.
Wow.
I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit. So at the point we were no longer wearing our long sleeve shirts anymore. We were just in t-shirts with the armor, helmets on, camelback on. And your ammo pouches and your water bottle pouches on your body armor.
And the body armor doesn't breathe worth a darn.
No, that's what we had really, and your goggles on. You had to put your goggles because there's no screen, obviously on the top cover because otherwise you can't shoot.
Yeah, I can't imagine it that hot. 145 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yeah.
That is unbelievably hot.
I think at that day though it was roughly about the 55 margin, 56, something like that. And even because what we do, we the day before, or the day before, we put all our water bottles, camel backs, and water bottles, everything else into the big fridge in the troop, and we leave it there overnight until literally like 5 minutes before we need to get out. And within 20 minutes, it's gone warm. It's all hot. You got to the point you don't need to boil a kettle anymore. You just leave a bottle of water outside, leave it for half an hour to an hour, and then just put some coffee in a cup, just pour it in there. It goes warm enough to drink. There you go.
Yeah,
save loads of electricity that way.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, makes sense.
Fry an egg, just put it on the truck.
Some places you could do that depending on how hot the surface was. If you put we tried making a barbecue where we left we put some old building materials that we found, and we built at the back of our troop. We built a little barbecue. We built like a little barbecue stand, and we found some metal sheets that we put on top of there, and just left it out all day long. It would get hot. You could do some bacon on it, some eggs, but you couldn't do a steak on it or anything.
No, but you could do like your quick.
Yeah, bacon egg sandwich. Get it on there, sizzles away, get it in a sandwich, eat it.
So now I'll ask the silly question: how were the rations?
Actually, I've got to say the food on tour was better than what we had back at home.
Oh,
So the rations. So, for instance, the food in the what the Americans call DFAC, we still call them the cookhouse, was far superior to anything we had back in our home unit. Once we got back in our home unit, it was slop. Yeah. But the stuff out on operations was superb. Every day a different meal.
They got to feed you well so that you'll fight well, right? That's the theory.
Absolutely. And because the British Army had its own chefs. They actually have fully trained chefs to cook the food, so they had all the supplies and everything. Where the Americans, as I understand it, they will, everyone takes turns cooking food. So you'll do like, I don't know, you'll be, your duty for the week will be to make breakfast, lunch, and dinner for all the troops, and it's all sort of like McDonald's stuff. So like you've got burger, what's called the quick line, the burger, so it's burger patties just thrown onto a grill and bacon and eggs and then sausage, all sorts. But you do have the normal line as well. But again, it kind of tasted, for me, it tasted a bit too artificial. That's why I preferred the food that the army chefs made. But the food and the rations, because we have like I think 10 different menus in the British Army. When you're in unit and you go on exercise, you always get menu E, which is the worst menu because they make so much of it. So they just give you menu E for when you're out on exercise. But when you're out in the field, like on proper operations, you get the better menus, which we always look forward to. So the rations that we had were pretty good. We also got these special salts that you mix in with water. It turns the water red. It causes cherry flavor. It's to replace it. It's to replenish the salt in your body because you just by the time you finish and you're inside in the aircon room and you stop sweating, all your hair is silver, your face is all covered, it's all grey around here because all the salt you've released through the sweat just dries off on your face. And it looks like someone's taken a handful of talcum powder and just gone into your face.
Oh, wow. That could be interesting, yeah.
And we also issued 2 sets more of uniform because you go through uniform like nobody's business because that's what you look like nearly every day. So when you go back, that in the laundry, fresh uniform to put on, and you head out the next morning, which is always fun.
So now with the military, I know with the UK they have the old rum ration that's still hung around from the days of sail. Did they have that for you guys as well, or no?
Only at Christmas. They will. Only at Christmas. What you have, we'll get into this other thing in a minute. When it comes to alcohol and tobacco and spirits, they would at Christmas, if you're duty or off duty, will have what's called gunshot, which is a big Norwegian container filled with coffee and spiced up with rum. So you get your cup full and then you have a drink. It was great. And if there's any left over, you just keep on drinking. And
you just keep on having seconds.
Well, someone's made it. Someone's gone through the trouble of making it. You can't just throw it away. You have to keep.
Well, no, that would be wasteful. You can't have that.
We do have what still rationing, but it was very different. And it's only for those who were typically stationed abroad in other countries like Germany or Cyprus or on operations. You have what's called a ration card. It was a card about this big, unfolded, and that was for tobacco, spirits, coffee, and a few other things as well, because we could buy these things in much larger jars and much larger bottles than what you could get in the civilian shops. And this was all tax-free stuff as well. So not only was it tax-free, but it was also so we were only allowed like 800 cigarettes a month. Okay. No, I say only, but 800 cigarettes a month. I think like only a certain amount of liters of spirits and only so many jars of coffee. Like I think like 2 jars of coffee things like, which is more than enough to see you through. I mean, a lot of people, like especially the non-smokers, they buy all the cigarettes, they fill up their entire month, and do while they're serving abroad, save it all up, and then put it in, fill the car up, and take it back to England and sell it off dirt cheap, but still.
Make an extra buck on the side,
Absolutely, because I mean, a pack of cigarettes for us would cost like, I don't know, at the time was €2.50 for a pack of 20, where in England they cost like £6.50. So you sell it off for £3.50, you're still making a profit.
You're making a buck,
So why not?
Why not? Yeah, just don't get caught. You'll be fine.
Yeah. And that's about it. But I mean, that day I remember, because it was my first operation, and thinking, oh right, this is really going to happen. We're actually going to, good chance we're going to get attacked or shot at. Quite a lot. I mean, we had our pop shots here and there, but we never actually came into any real combat.
This is like first time kind of thing.
Yeah, but luckily, but unfortunately, we could not get. We got to a certain part of the city, and we saw then there were more and more people. As we got a little bit further in, there was more and more people that we eventually there was just a huge crowd, and we just could not get through. There's no way we were going to get in there, and we weren't going to block ourselves in either. So we just one vehicle at a time reversed out, and then turned our vehicles around, and then stayed in that position. So in case they started charging us from the city, that we could just get out of there. Right. And
you have a line of retreat,
but luckily, some, as I said, the infantry managed to get in there. I think a couple of engineers managed to get in there as well. They've retrieved the bodies from the helicopter, and they left the helicopter there. That got
of course
later on. I mean, if the Iraqis don't care, then we don't care, because if you ever travelled at that time, at least, when you travelled down the Iraqi highways or roads, you'll see an old tank from the first Gulf War all busted up, just left there. If a car broke down, the side of the motorways looked like rubbish tips. So, a car broke down, they just roll it off the side of the road, and it just got left there. It just got left there. The guy would walk home, and then he'll get himself a new car, or steal himself a new car, whatever. And that just
museum made easy.
Where it is. Eventually, a lot of the special forces guys had that removed, and they used that then to surround. And they all piled this up together and sort of spread it around their areas of operations, because they knew that if because they also had access to basically, so no one can observe them from a satellite image. So if it's a satellite image coming down, it just looks like a junkyard, and you can't tell what's what. Which was pretty clever thinking on their part, I thought. And the highways looked much cleaner after that.
There you go. Reuse.
Why not? One man's junk is another man's treasure.
Absolutely,
exactly.
So I guess one thing I think would be an interesting way to talk about would be so for those, because I know we have NB Geek, who is in the United States military, and a few other people that were, what would be the differences between, the units you served in and the United States? Because I know even Canada has different mandates and rules.
Well, we have different operating procedures. I mean, for instance, when we used to go out on our little jollies, to different locations, if we saw an American convoy coming in the distance, guys who were doing the same job as we were, protecting convoys, we saw them come up to the junction. First thing we'd do was slow right down, let them pass over the junction, being polite, and then we'll carry on our way. Because there are certain regiments, we don't know which ones, who stop for no one. They won't stop for anyone, not even allies. And if you get in the way, they will move you out of the way.
Yeah.
It's not all of them,
right of way, go away.
Some of them will, and they have these nice, lovely, beautiful, gorgeous 50 cal weapons on top of their Humvees and these bigger monsters that they had, with these electric turrets that go.
The Bradleys,
boom, 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 and we're not going to mess with that, because we're just a couple of guys with rifles.
They've got
these big
little
50 cals
there.
we weren't going to get in the way. We thought we'll be polite, we'll be British. Go ahead, go first, after you, and then we'll carry on our own way.
Yeah.
This is that's how we operate. But it's certain things. I mean, for instance, we were only allowed to fire. We were only allowed to fire when fired upon. We had this special white card. It was called a card alpha. In there was basically stated all the reasons when we were allowed to shoot and when we're not to shoot and why. And as long as but one of the guys that we had, a guy we called Mad Al, because he wasn't all right in the head. He was a reservist. He was from what called TA, or Territorial Army, basically weekend warriors. They tip up for 2 weekends a month and one Tuesday every week. After work, sort of Tuesday evening, they do like 4 hours at Tuesday nights, and then every second weekend. He was not all there in the head, but he was out there to get some experience. He said, useful experience. He said, and he explained to us that as long as you write down that what's written on the card alpha as your statement, that you only shot because he was this person you shot at was a danger to themselves or others, you're safe as houses. It doesn't have to, he said it doesn't have to be true. Just as
long as they can't prove otherwise, you're good.
Absolutely. As long as that's your statement and your buddies will back you up, you can pretty much do whatever you want, he said. And I said, yeah, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, let's not say we did. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not that lucky.
yeah. You don't understand my luck, my friend.
That's the way it is. Well, some people, depending on their character, what kind of character, they can really get away with murder.
Okay, 1 second. Carry on. I got to answer a phone here.
Yeah, no problem. And so that's just the way. But that was what our operating procedure. We couldn't fire unless fired upon. So if we saw a guy in the distance, he's juggling rifles in the air. As long as he's not shooting at us, we can't do anything. He could throw. He could throw a bazooka. Throw a bazooka in the air. As long as he's not firing it at us. And it's just the way it is.
I'd be worried if they're throwing bazookas in the air.
Well, they could do whatever they want. But the thing is, that's one thing we hate the most was we have to wait for them to shoot at us first.
Right.
Yeah.
With the chance that someone might die. So we have to potentially have to wait for someone to get killed first before we can fire back. And it wasn't right.
No, the rules of engagement usually screw over. Kind of going way off topic, but that was a problem in Vietnam.
Well, the problem in Vietnam was letting the enemy know about it.
Yeah, well, there's that too. Oops. But yeah, that's the rules of engagement always, which is why Western powers have such a hard time in like a guerrilla warfare situation, because we have rules and they don't. And that's where we get nailed, is because we have rules of engagement. We have to follow certain ethical morals where they don't.
Well, one thing we got taught, we were actually taught more. Most training today, when it comes to most modern militaries, actually train with a lot more guerrilla style warfare in their training. Where you go out rather than sending up, 5 battalions in one big group, like you see in a lot of movies where you got tanks in formation and planes in formation and trucks in formation, soldiers in formation, marching towards the enemy. Nobody does that anymore. Nobody does that. But they'd rather have small groups of men or women,
small attack groups,
go off into certain areas, cause a load of havoc, split up, because you can pace out up to like 10, 15 meters per person. And then you're covering a much larger area. And so you can cause a lot of chaos that way. And that's pretty much how we do that these days as well. There's still some sort of training where we will go in en masse, but that's very rarely done now. I think the only time we'll ever do something like that really is if we're ever facing someone like, I don't know, the Germans again or something,
or Russia.
But when it comes to smaller, inferior armies who will use guerrilla warfare tactics, that's pretty much who what we train for these days. The days of marching in big regiments towards the enemy.
Yeah, that started to go out of style in World War One when the machine gun was brought into effect.
I know, yeah, pretty much. March smartly across no man's land, but they have machine guns. Yes, you'll be fine. Yeah,
don't worry about it, chap. You'll be fine.
Yes, you have a helmet. There you go. You'll be fine.
Yeah, you're safe.
Yeah. Good old Field Marshal Haig. I tell you, he's very
should have went to the Hague. Anyway, I'm just saying. There was a few of them that were special. We'll put it that way.
Well, we don't have field marshals in the army anymore. We got rid of the field marshal rank. It's just now generals.
Yeah, World War II kind of ruined that rank.
But we had him up until I think it was just about 2000, 2001. And then he was the last field marshal. And to be honest, there was no need to have another one again. Because if general was supposed to be the highest rank, field marshals didn't really do anything. No, really, the generals made all the decisions. So the field marshals, by the time you're a field marshal, you're so far out of date on military tactics and everything else. There's no point there being you.
It's just a pencil pusher by that point.
Yeah, you liaise with the Queen at some point. Yeah, this is what the men are doing. A go between, basically, a very expensive go between, no less. So we just got rid of them. Yeah, yeah, which is a good thing.
Yeah,
but, yeah. Do you have any questions?
Well, I guess, was there any, what was, I guess, for me, because I like them, what was the armor that the British were using at the time? The Challengers?
We had, as track vehicles go, we had Warriors and Challengers.
Okay, because Canada was Leopard too.
We were using the Charlie 2s at the time and Warriors as well.
Okay.
Warriors didn't do too well out there because of the heat.
No, the Challengers were a better tank.
Great in Bosnia, not so great in Iraq.
No.
Some of our, as well as our trucks at the time, before we got the new MAN trucks, which were superb, you can use them in any environment. We had the Bedfords and the DAF, and the Bedfords could not tolerate the heat whatsoever out there. And the DAFs barely worked anyway, so they didn't really care about the DAFs because if they weren't being jump started, they were being replaced by something else. So but most of the vehicles we used, the armored vehicles that we used, were mainly the armored Land Rovers, which were fast, maneuverable. The engines could take it. They were these engines were built for pretty much any environment. And it had an aircon system inside as well, which was great. So, that was mainly used for the equipment, of course. But, when we were standing out there, we'd stick a hand down, move one of the aircon nozzles, and it was just firing against our balls. So we had nice, cool balls to cool us down. So you get a bit, you could cool down a bit, and then you turn it back after 15 minutes while you're doing, once you cool down a bit, turn it down. I mean, only cool you down from the lower half, but it helped, it wasn't
because I want to be a smart ass. What was the T protocol?
T, basically you wait until you got to the other end because we weren't really supposed to stop unless we were at junctions. There's no time to make a cup of tea. That's a bit of an exaggeration. We don't stop.
We bug the Canadian military because they've got their coffee everywhere. Like when we had our bases in Kandahar, we had 2 Tim Hortons fully functional because our boys need coffee.
Nation asks a good question. What innovations do you see on the horizon for the Brits? Well, as far as British equipment goes, I think for now they'll probably get new versions of the equipment that we had at that time, especially like the specialized equipment that allowed us to bypass IEDs and stuff. They'll obviously have new versions of that by now.
I know they're working on new upgrades to the Challenger too.
The weapon, when I first joined up, the weapon we had, which was the L85A1 SA-80 rifle, was a bag of shit. It was like the M16 in Vietnam, the first model of the M16.
Yeah,
terrible. You could oil it up as much as you want; it was just going to rust. Stoppages to no end. Carbon would not come off at all. It would just basically, once you fired about 10 rounds, carbon would just fuse to the gas parts. You
Oh,
would not get that off. You could scrub as hard as you want. Eventually, you end up breaking the gas plug or something, so you had to replace that, and sometimes they bill you for it. And then we got then the A2 version, which was far superior, made from much better materials. It was actually this version was made by Heckler and Koch, so it was a far superior version of the weapon. And then lately, I think it was about a year or two ago, they brought out the A3 model, which is by far superior to the A2. It's still made by Heckler and Koch, but it's just much sturdier equipment, better designs to it. For instance, we used to have what's called the old green brick, which is a handguard on there. They've gotten rid of that. They now got the same as the Americans. They have this cover that goes over the barrel. It has like these little rails that go along it. And you can put hand guards on there and laser lights, searchlights, whatever else you want to put on there.
it's very adaptable.
Yeah, I mean the weapon my buddy had, I just had the brick hand guard, which had a little light on the side of it. Where the screws went in, you could attach, put the thing over the screw hole and then put the screw back in. You had a little torch in front, which doesn't do much good. Which doesn't do much good during the day. He had what's called the UGL, the underslung grenade launcher, where he removed the brick. Essentially, it just goes right over. You put the screw back in. It has a little grenade launcher underneath, a little sight to go with it. And so he had his little grenades to go with it. Asked him if we wanted to swap. He said, no, I like this because you can hold it with two hands. And so if you're firing from a standing position, that weapon is great with two handles. But if you've got the hand grip, the brick, forget it. You're doing essentially then you're doing little circles like this. And it just puts you off from wanting to fire in the standing position. It's not a comfortable position with that rifle because it's a bullpup rifle. If you had the magazine at the front, at least you could either grip it or rest the magazine on your hand.
Okay.
But you couldn't because the magazine was at the rear, so even trying to hold it like that was no good. You had to, because it was front heavy, so you had to hold it from the front, and you're just doing little circles like that. It was terrible. So we've got a much better weapon now. I think some new vehicles, obviously, that they got in, especially for operations in the deserts, like the Mastiff and the Bulldog, which is pretty much the same weapon, pretty much the same vehicle, just difference in size. The Bulldog's much smaller, where the Mastiff is much bigger, and they're obviously to replace the armored MANs as well as the Snatch Vixens. So they're now those two vehicles never see any more duties out in the desert again. And I don't know. There was some rumor that they might bring back the 7.62 rifle, which was known as the what's called the SLR. They had a version of that, the first version of that, where apparently was a superb weapon, and now they've made this. There is a new version of that weapon. They are thinking about bringing it in. Personally, I don't think they need to. They can keep the A3. It's a good weapon. It's pretty decent. But I think they're dying to have the 7.62 back. I don't know.
We want gunpowder. So, I want to thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me on.
And
very interesting conversation.
I hope that everybody has found it interesting. And we'll have the roundtable this Friday with myself, Jeff, and Mark being fully tired. And we'll coming soon. I'm not sure when because I'm still in the processes of doing it. We're going to have a little quick Band of Brothers series with Pat S. Coming up soon.
When's this?
So that will be fun. That's coming up.
Sorry, when are you doing the Band of Brothers thing?
I'm not sure. We're still in the planning process, but we're going to do a couple of panels over a couple of different channels. I've been asked to represent history with R&R on that, so we're gonna do some collabs with that.
Okay. Is this about the actual guys, or is this about the show? Both. Because I just bought the whole season. I've got to go back and do some refreshes, and I've been looking at some of the interviews with some of the actual Easy Company guys, and so that'll be fun when we get to that. I'm not sure when Pat S wants to do it, but I know it'll be soon. And then we'll go from there. Cool. But till next time, as my old co-host used to say, thank you and good night.